Welcome to episode 239 of the Fabulously Keto Podcast. And today I'm chatting with Philly J. Lay. Philly was actually recommended to me quite a while ago by my friend Geraint Hull, who's also a previous podcast guest, and he helps me with my membership group. It took me a bit of time to get round to inviting Philly, but I finally did it, and I'm so glad I did. Philly has an incredible story to share, from a life-changing medical experience to completely turning her health around using natural methods like breathwork, tapping, fasting, and a low-carb lifestyle. She now shares her knowledge and wisdom through her podcast, The Wellness Way, and is even launching her own festival. So here's Philly's bio. Philly J. Lay is a leading voice in natural health and host of the chart-topping podcast, The Wellness Way. Following a traumatic medical experience that left her fighting for her life, Philly rebuilt her health using natural methods and became a powerful advocate for holistic healing. She now uses her platform to inspire and empower others to take charge of their well-being, combining ancient wisdom with modern insight. Let's go and hear from Philly. Welcome, Philly, to the Fabulously Keto Podcast. It's fabulous to have you with us today.
It's fabulous to be here, Jackie. Thank you so much for inviting me on.
So we always start with, where in the world are you?
Oh, I'm in the Chiltern Hills, out in nature, where I do my foraging and my growing in the wilds of the woods. And I walk around the whole time, barefoot. There we go. My dirty feet. I don't wear shoes, even out in the woods. Just at one with nature here.
You're very good. I'm not very good at walking outside with no shoes on. I should get better at it.
Yeah.
So why don't we start by, because I know you've got a very intriguing and sort of tumultuous journey to get where you are today. Why don't you take us through that a little bit?
Right. I'll start with my spinal fusion. So 11 years, just over 11 years ago, I had a spinal fusion and they missed my spine with the anesthetic and I nearly died. And I completely went away from this world. My life, very strangely, was not saved by a surgeon that day. It was saved by the registrar of the hospital, who, when I did come round, there was a mattress on the floor by my bed and somebody had been sleeping there. And this person apparently was standing at the back of the room and she was the registrar. And all she did for 24 hours was she lay by my side and said, come on, find your happy place. Where's your happy place? Let's go to your happy place. And I couldn't. And after 24 hours, my now ex-husband was called to bring the children in to say goodbye. And they came in and they were my happy place and I came round. But I spent 2 years of my life in bed, addicted to opioids and alcohol, and my health just spiraled out of control. So I had chronic fatigue, autoimmune diseases popping up, never going away. I had brain fog. You talk about kind of brain fog about, oh, where did I put my keys? This was more a case of I didn't actually know what keys were for. It was bad. I have, that could be the alcohol and the opioids as well. But I don't really have that many recollections of that 2 years of my life. But then one day I woke up and there was this massive lump I noticed in my throat. And so I went to my GP and basically I was this big fat lump just sitting there blubbing and I looked like shit, and he just said, right, we need to get you into consultants. Got me into loads of consultants, and I sat there and I kept saying, is it connected, and they don't know because they're not taught to connect the body. So my tumor surgeon just said, obviously I don't know, but I'm just going to cut that out, and if I can save half your tumor, your thyroid, I will. And I had a frozen shoulder, and so the surgeon said, oh, I'm just going to operate on it, but I'll give you an injection now. And he just stabbed this needle in me and it was so painful, and I let out this fearsome scream, and he went, it didn't hurt, it was just an injection. I went, my body is so sensitive and so kind of gone you have no idea how much pain you've just caused me. I think one of the things that kept me alive, apart from my children over that period of time, was everybody used to say to me and complain and go, will you stop humming? Will you stop humming? And I didn't know them, but the vagus nerve will connect the gut to the stomach and hum and vibrate. And so my body was trying to heal. Obviously I was eating terrible food because I couldn't get out of bed. So I was relying, on my youngest daughter used to make me microwave meals, bless her. But, she was a child, a small child. So I was kind of eating shit. And also over this period, I was suffering from a huge amount of grief because the 4 women who kind of formed me, my being, all passed away at that time. So my sister, my mum, and my 2 best friends. And so the pain that I was going through, and as they were dying, I was trying to find solutions because I couldn't get out of bed. So I was listening to webinars and buying docuseries. And the first one I discovered was The Truth About Cancer. And when I listened to that, and I'm just like, oh my God, everything we have been told is a lie. And so when I found the tumor in my throat, I'm like, okay, I had the tumor out, which I now deeply regret because I now know all the wonderful things I could have done to heal. But I gave up Western medicine and I said, that's it, I'm done. I'm not having the frozen shoulder. I'm not having anything else. I'm going on a journey and I'm going to heal myself naturally. And that's what I did. And I spent the next kind of 5 years of my life solidly learning all of this. And I started with diet and nutrition. And so I discovered keto through Dr. McCullough. And I discovered Dr. McCullough. So it's just like, oh, wow. So I listened endlessly to anything that he was on. And I just kind of thought, okay. And then my marriage couldn't really take this. It becomes a lifestyle. You can't just kind of pick and choose and say, I'm doing the odd bit. And so I gave up all sugar, including alcohol, for 6 months, all carbs, which are sugar. I gave up absolutely everything. And I thought, okay, I'm going to detox, intermittent fasting I learned about, getting into ketosis. And it was just like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. But Danny, my ex, it's a big ask for a family when it's, and I was so fanatical, I would scream if he came in and he had his shoes on going, I don't know what chemicals you've touched on the street. They could have been spraying for weed killers, get them off. And, and if he'd used aftershave, no, you can't have that. Perfume aftershave is the new smoke. Get it out. So I was very, very hysterical as a person. And it was hard work for my family. So we did part company. And on the day that we separated, I did a Facebook post and somebody contacted me who I had worked as an office junior 22 years earlier in an estate agent for her. And she contacted me and said, I've just seen your post. Our friendship was a long time ago and very short, but I'm filled with very happy memories from knowing you. And I'm doing a course in September and I'd like you to come along. What's your email? So I sent her my email and said, thank you, clicked on the course. I had never heard of it. It was something called EFT, tapping emotional freedom technique. Didn't know anything about it, but I noticed that it was quite an expensive course. So I was just about to message her and go, that's really kind, but I can't afford it, sorry, because I wasn't actually quite sure how I was going to live. I mean, I had my own business, but when you go down to 1 income from 2, it's a big lifestyle change. And just as I did that, she sent me a message and said, oh, by the way, it's a gift. And when the universe gives you a gift, you accept it.
Absolutely.
And I'm like, okay, thank you. So I rock up in September to this course and they're all sitting there tapping. And I'm just like, oh my God, this is as mad as shit. I got to go, but I can't go because it's a gift. But I can't sit here and do this because this is just crap. This is like a whole day of my life I'm never going to get back.
Yeah.
And then at 11 o'clock, and I remember it so clearly at 11 o'clock because it was just after the coffee break. We were starting in the next session of the day. Everybody sat down and everybody's tapping. And I'm not tapping because I'm just like, oh. Then I let out another God almighty scream. And I fell off my chair and I fell on the floor. And I thought I was being stabbed. And then I thought I was having a heart attack. And I was just like, oh my God, I'm going to die. So I'm screaming at these people to get me an ambulance. And they're all sitting there continuing to tap. And so I got a little bit rude. Like, get me a fucking ambulance, I'm going to die. And Penny just picked me up off the floor and put me on a chair, and she started tapping on me. And I was hysterical. And I was going, you don't understand. I don't need you to tap on me. I need an ambulance. And she calmed me down kind of just by tapping. And they're all sitting around the room tapping on themselves. And then she takes me through the process. And I can see and feel the pain in my body. And, you know, you give it a color and you give it a form and you give it an intensity. And I could just see this going around my body. And then we're going back to childhood trauma. And, you know, all of this stuff is coming up. And we finished at 1 o'clock lunch break. She kind of brought it to the end. And I wasn't done. Somebody had to take me into a private room, one of her helpers, and continue to work with me because I had gone into what we call abreaction. But just before I was taken out, she flicked her slide on the screen and said, and that is a perfect example of chasing the pain. And I'm like, what the fuck is this? And I sat there for the whole week going, this is extraordinary. This is just extraordinary. And then lots of expletives because I could not understand what I was learning. And that was my entry into energy medicine. And I discovered the joys of it. And, you know, it's a little bit, you know, even when my children were little, I used, when I could, homeopathy. And, you know, once you start learning about energy and you learn about all of the different modalities that you can use, it's all basically quantum physics. And I believe very much that there will come a time that we don't need to be doing this because we will just be able to transmute to each other, that we're going to heal. You know, I interviewed the wonderful Lynn McTaggart on my podcast. And the power of 8, it's extraordinary. But that's kind of my journey, how I got here.
Wonderful. So I noticed in your book you had one of the forwards by Carl Dawson. So I must have met him in maybe 2007 or 8 or something, long time ago. So I've been doing EFT since about 2005. And when I knew it had worked, I used to have this horrible fear of snakes. My sister had a snake and I was fine if it was in the tank, but if they took it out, then I was right over the other side of the room and I didn't want to go anywhere near it. And I never, ever, ever tapped about snakes because it's not something that comes into my being, you know, it doesn't bother me at all because I don't see snakes. It's not something
you don't see them that often, do you, really, love?
But I knew that the EFT had changed it when my kids were about 7 and we went to it wasn't a zoo, it was a sort of small animal park, and it was with the school and they brought round a snake and I just knew it had changed and I didn't have the same fear about it and I was able to touch the snake, and I now have a photo of me wearing a snake. So that's all through EFT. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. Yeah, so I'm a level 3
it is
practitioner. Not that I do it very much anymore, but yeah, we do it sometimes in my membership group. So then
I do it in my membership group as well.
Yeah, so
it's something that everybody should have in their backpack because it's easy and it's free and it's just extraordinary.
Yeah. So yeah, I've been on so while I've only been low carb for about 8 years now, I've been on this health journey for over 20, and it's maybe 25 to 30 years. It started when my husband bought me an aromatherapy book, and everything changed from then. When my kids were about 18 months old, one, they kept getting skin boils all three of us did. And then the other was Ben had really, really bad eczema. And so I started using homeopathy. And since then, I've only ever used homeopathy. Other than I take migraine, I was taking migraine pills, but I've even come off of those now. So yeah.
Well, you know, the good hack for that, which is a Dr. McCullough one. So when I was kind of really, really sick, one of the tests that I did go ahead and do while I was in my bed was I wanted to know if I was celiac. So I went to see a specialist, and because every time I ate gluten, I came up in these huge red rashes all over my body. So my doctor said, well, you might be celiac. Would you like a test? And I said, yes. Well, I was very ill very quickly, putting the gluten back in my diet. Red blotches, vomiting, feeling like I was being strangled. And it got worse and worse. And after about 4 weeks, I had to take back to my bed. And I'd been doing quite well up to that moment. But the minute the gluten went back in, I had to go back to bed. And I spent 2 weeks there, and I had these blinding migraines. And my little girl said to me, shall I look up and see what Dr. McCullough says, Mummy? I went, yes, please. So, whereas my ex-husband is just shouting at me and going, for God's sake, you know you're celiac, just stop doing the testing, you know. And I said, I actually want a diagnosis. There was something in me that kind of thought, I didn't know that our genetics really have very little. I interviewed Dr. Bruce Lipton, less than 1% of the outcome of our health. So for me at that point, I believed that your DNA and your genetics you pass down to your children. So I wanted my children to find out if I was celiac. But also, well, no, I'll come to that in a minute. I was blinding ill, but the one thing that Dr. McCullough recommended was to put cayenne pepper in bone broth and drink it. So my daughter was making me bone broth with cayenne pepper. I put, the first time I did it, I put 3 teaspoons, or she did, of cayenne pepper in. Now, my migraine disappeared from my mind, but because my mouth was just like, oh, I my mouth. But I then kind of went down to the half teaspoon. But having worked with Barbara O'Neill quite a lot, I've discovered that cayenne pepper is just this amazing herb to push blood around the body. So, you know, you have a migraine, have a headache, hit the cayenne pepper, but not 3 spoons.
No, titrate it up is a good.
Yeah. But the interesting thing was, I went back after the 6 weeks to have the results of the celiac test. And the consultant said to me, you know, do you think you're celiac? And I went, without a shadow of a doubt, I'm definitely celiac. And he went, no, you're not. I'm like,
Yeah.
I must be. He went, no, you're not. And it just goes to show that if all those people that are still on gluten and they have their celiac test and their consultant or their doctor comes back and says, no, you're not celiac, you can carry on eating gluten, think again, because I was so ill and yet I wasn't. So, you know, had that happened a year earlier when I was still eating gluten, I would have thought I was okay. But
oh, that's good. And I'll carry on eating bread.
So yeah, I mean, I found a way around that using EFT, but I'll come to that later because that's a great story. I went on this extraordinary journey, and when 2020 hit, it was just like I was in such shock because I just couldn't believe that people were shutting down and wearing masks and putting this toxic hand sanitizer on your hands, you know. And I knew people that literally lost a layer of skin off their hands and were in agony. And I go, stop it. You know, it's the skin is the largest organ of your body. You don't do this. You don't cover your nose because breath work is singularly the most important motion of your body. You know, it produces the nitric oxide. And as Dr. Otto Warburg said in his papers in the 1930s, nothing, including cancer, can grow in an alkaline body. And how do you alkaline a body? With nitric oxide. Breath work. You know, so I just couldn't believe this insanity was going on. And I thought, what can I do?
I
Sorry.
bought into it initially. Not that I didn't buy into it in a certain sense, in that I wouldn't care for myself about it. I just carried on. But we were locked down, and I did think, oh, maybe it is transferred. I did at that time believe in viruses, which I'm not sure about now. All those sorts of things. It was only when I read, for some reason in 2021 or 2021, I think, I read 1984 for the first time ever. And I just thought, oh my God, this is
Yeah,
what we're going through. And that
we're
was the
living it.
beginning of me waking up. I mean, I would never have a vaccine. My kids are not vaccinated. And I've always said over my dead body, they had the first ones when they're like 6 weeks old. And after that, they never had any. And I just thought, no, if I die of whatever it is that's going around, then so be it. But I'm not putting anything in my body. I'm pleased about that, but I wasn't that awake to what was going on. But I didn't ever use that hand sanitizer. I haven't. I won't go near
Yeah,
it.
I
But
mean,
I was going to say, there's a dentist. I went to the dentist after this, and they said, "Oh, can you sanitize your hands?" So I just went over. Luckily, it was round the corner, and I just went and pretended to do it, and then did all this pretending to rub it in. And I just thought,
oh,
it's not worth the argument.
yeah, I made sure I had a lot of arguments with a lot of people. Go, do you know how important these are? Do you know these little puppies are also maps of all your organs in your body? You don't mess with them. So I was quite
Yeah,
out there.
very
And
scary
I
too.
mean, for me, I always thought when I had my awakening, I believed that they would do something. Now, I'm not as lucky as you. I woke up later in life, so my children had most of their jabs. I stopped when they were about 15 and 13 and said, right, no more. I've just woken up. You're not having another jab. And I kind of figured that they would always do something like this, but I thought they were coming for the children. So I thought they were going to do like they've done in America and do compulsory vaccine schedule and ramp it up. I think it's 72 injections a child in America has.
Yeah.
I mean, just unbelievable. So I thought that's what was going to happen. So when 2020 hit, I'm like, no, really? They're coming for all of us?
Yep.
No. And I remember I was chatting to a guy on Tinder at the time. And I said, oh, are you having the injection then? And I actually called it a vaccine then, because I didn't know they were going to change the definition of vaccine to put in this. And he went, don't be so stupid. There isn't one. I went, oh, give it time. It'll be here by the end of the year. He went, oh my God, you're just mental. I'm going, I am. So that was really shocking for me, because I just thought, wow, had no idea they were going to try and take the whole lot of us down.
Yeah.
So.
But they didn't manage it. So
No, they didn't. So what I did was I kind of thought, right, I need a solution to that. So you mentioned earlier my book. So I wrote my first book, The Natural Wellness Journal, and I wrote and published in 2.5 months and got it out. And I joined a writing course with Hay House online in October 2020. And there was a Q&A, and Reed Tracy, the CEO of Hay House, was on. And I put my hand up in the chat, and I knew I was going to get picked. There were 1,000 people online, 5 questions, and I knew I'd be one. I told him a little bit about my story and said, and I'm going to write a book. I'm going to start it now, and I'm going to write and publish it before Christmas. And he just laughed and said, good luck with that. And I kind of thought, I can do this. One day I will hand him my book. And when I did it, I wrote and published, and I signed it off on the winter solstice. So I have 4 days to go before Christmas, obviously self-publishing. And I published with Balboa Press, and I phoned them and I said, can we get this out before Christmas? I have to be able to tell Reed Tracy I did this. And they said, we'll do our best. I said, okay, forget Balboa. I said, can you contact Amazon and ask them to put it up as a pre-order? And they went, no, of course we can't. They would never put up a first-time self-published author as a pre-order. That will not ever happen. He said, no, besides that, it's a whole different format. So we put it up, and 2 weeks later, they will get it up. But it has to be all formulated. So that's not a goer. I'm like, okay. And I spent the rest of the day on my bed, and I was tapping. I did loads and loads of tapping because I had barely slept for 2.5 months, which I know is not good for you. But I was going to do this. I was doing breathwork meditation. I've also trained with Soma breath. So I was doing lots of Soma breath, lots of tapping, lots of meditation. I even did didgeridoo. And the whole day I lay there and I just focused on my book being on Amazon as a pre-order. And on the 23rd of December, I looked on and I was up. So I thought, okay, I've ticked. I've done what I said. And then on Boxing Day, I said to my daughter, I've got a funny feeling. I said, I'm just going to check Amazon, see if my book's up. And she went, oh, for God's sake, Mother, it's not going to be up. You're mad. And I'm going, I meditated. And she went, Mother, you're mad. And I'm going, okay, but I'll be able to look. And I had a look. And there I was up as a pre-order. And my published date, and it still is December the 21st, 2020, the winter solstice,
Wow.
the day I signed it off. How does that happen?
Amazing. You're very good at manifesting.
I'm a shit hot manifester.
That's all down to the breath work, isn't it? I've read that bit in your book.
It is. And the tapping.
Yeah.
So, and I will come back to when I was talking about food and being, highly allergic to gluten. After Danny and I, the first Christmas that we split up, some dear friends of ours said, come over for Christmas Day with your children, both of you together. We've known you, your whole life. We're going to be able to keep this calm and make it a lovely day for the children so that they know that they haven't given up, their parents. It's just you can't live together. So it's like, okay, but it was fraught. And a couple of weeks before Christmas, Danny pulled out. Julian picked up the phone and went, stop it, you're coming. And that's it. And then about a week later, I pulled out. Lizzie picked up the phone and went, stop it, you're coming, and calmed it down. And then she said, right, what are we going to feed you on Christmas Day? And I said, oh, I'll just bring my own food. And she went, you're not coming for Christmas Day and bringing your own food. This is meant to be normality. And your madness has kind of already cost you your marriage. So you are going to come here and be normal and you will eat. And I said, I can't, you don't understand how ill. And she just said, oh, I'll do you some salmon. I went, I'm not eating farmed salmon. It's one of the most toxic foods on the planet. They're covered in lice and they spray them everywhere. And she just went, you're not coming. And she hung up on me. So I phoned her back. I went, I am coming. You've invited me and I'm coming. We're all coming and there's nothing you can do about it. So I rock up. I wake up Christmas morning and I know that it's going to be a challenging day. And my girls are still asleep because they're older. So I've got a few hours to myself where I meditate and I tap and I do my breath work and I do what I need to do. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to eat anything I want today. And I started tapping through the points, going, even though I'm allergic to gluten, I love and accept myself. Even though, and I keep going through, and I do 2 hours of breathwork, tapping, meditation. Danny comes to pick us up. We drive down to Essex, walk into the hall, and there's a big table in the hall. And on that table is mince pies and Christmas cakes and chocolate logs and sweets and, all the stuff that I hadn't had for a long time, over a year. I just went and picked up a mince pie and my daughters kind of grabbed my hand and went, stop it. You can't embarrass yourself here today. I went, it's fine. I can eat anything I want here today. And they go, Mum. And normally within a mouthful, the red blotches, halfway through, I'd be retching, but I ate it and I carried on all day eating just shit after shit after shit. And I was absolutely fine. And I'm like, wow, what's going on here? This is amazing. Clever body. Well done, you. Now, we stayed over. I woke up the next morning and I could smell croissants in the oven. And I hadn't had a croissant for over a year, and they were one of my absolute favorite foods in the world. And I ran. I didn't meditate or anything. I just leapt out of bed, ran downstairs, and went, oh my God, I'm going to have a croissant. I slapped the butter and the jam on. I shoved it in my mouth. And then, so the first reaction I always had was as if a bee had stung inside my mouth.
Yeah.
And it was just like, oh my God. But I can eat anything. So I carried on eating. And then I promptly turned bright red and vomited on her kitchen floor. But I realized that when you prep your brain, so I hadn't prepped my brain that day, that you can do anything you like. So now I have done enough work on me that I can eat gluten again. So I eat very, very little of it. But, if it's my child's birthday, I will have a piece of cake.
Yeah.
If, I also, you have to look at the ingredients in gluten-free food. And the majority of it is just toxic crap.
Yeah.
And I thought, I don't want to eat that, but I do want to eat organic sourdough, beautiful home cooked bread. So I'm just going to teach my body that it can do this. And that's what I did.
Fabulous. So, I mean, you've done acupuncture, kinesiology, I think.
Yep, do a lot of muscle testing. Love muscle
Of
testing.
all the things that you do, which are the ones that you think have had the most impact on you?
Okay, that's quite easy to answer because when I wrote the Natural Wellness Journal, I put right at the beginning daily essentials. There are some things that, for me, that a lifestyle, intermittent fasting, without a shadow of a doubt, is incredibly important. I do like to do the 3-day fasts, and I do those with my community, but I don't necessarily do the water fast with them. So in winter, when people celebrate the new year in the middle of winter, when we're hibernating, I go, you can't do a water fast. So we do a bone broth fast. And then on the spring equinox, we did a smoothie and juice fast. And then summer, we will do a water fast, and then we'll go back to smoothie and juice, and then we'll go back to bread broth. So I think that fasting element is very, very important. With the diet, another daily essential is bone broth or smoothies. So I don't juice very often, kind of, I might occasionally buy a juice, but I think it's really important to have the fiber. Yeah. My first meal of the day, if it's winter, it's a bone broth. If it's summer, it's a smoothie. And I know that I have got every single nutrient that I need in my body for that day. So no matter what happens, I also have herbal teas when I wake up. So I used to be a kind of a builder's tea, 20 mugs a day, really strong.
I am still.
And then I discovered milk was cow pus. And I'm like, okay, giving that up. So I don't like milk and I don't like nut milk. So I just kind of thought, okay, I'm going to, and I used to think that herbal teas just tasted like wee and really were not fit for purpose. But once I started learning about the herbs, I forage. I'm blessed to have a really great garden. I have my stinging nettles every day, my dandelion root. I have a hawthorn for my heart. I have licorice root, which is great for the mRNA zero spike protein and shedding. So star anise, so is pine needle. So I put all of those in the pot, and then I'll have some mint or some chamomile or whatever I fancy. And that is my medicine chest. And I have that every day. Then when I break my fast, normally around 2:00 in the afternoon, then I go for either my smoothie or my juice or whatever. So that's really important. Breath work and meditation and tapping are in there. I tend to combine all three together for the first hour of my day. But, if you don't run your day will run you. And you don't meditate to get good at meditation. You meditate to get good at life. And that is the key. And I know that if I don't spend that half an hour is the kind of minimum I do. Saturday morning, I very rarely get up before midday because I'm just out there and on another plane from 7:00 in the morning, going and visiting the matrix and the universe and having the conversations, planning my week, planning my year, having my conversations with people that I might not have had time to have picked the phone up to. Now, I know you could say that maybe I should spend my Saturday mornings picking up the phone, but I actually like to go out to the matrix.
In the ether, yes.
Yeah. So those, I think, are my... Cold water therapy is another great one. I'm terrified of water, having had 2 incidents as a child. Now, I had tapped on the swimming pool incident when I was about 6. One of my sister's friends thought it would be funny because I was 5 years younger, I was this little one hanging on to jump in the pool, dive bomb me and hold me under. And I got very panicky and I thought I was going to die. But then a couple of years later, my parents had no money at all growing up. We had tomato sandwiches because Dad didn't grow cheese. It was that simple. If we didn't grow it, we didn't eat it. And Dad won a premium bond and we went on a cruise to the Canary Islands on the Fred Olsen line. And we'd never been abroad, apart from my dad, who was a pilot in World War II, but the rest of us, we'd never been abroad. And Mum was afraid of flying because she saw what crashing aeroplanes had done to my father. And so we went on this cruise and it was just like, oh my God, we're going to a foreign country. And it was so long ago, I'm in my 60s, and it was so long ago that the Canary Islands didn't even have ports. Okay. I mean, it was just the ships docked and that was it. So anyway, we were coming home and we'd just gone through the Bay of Biscay. And there was an SOS warning for a Greek fishing boat that was in distress in a massive storm that had broken out. And we were the nearest ship and we had to go back and get them. And so we were all kind of strapped in round the pool to chairs and to furniture. And it's like, right, we're going into the eye of the storm. And I just remember all the plate glass doors all shattering and the boat going everywhere. And I just kind of thought, oh my God, we're going to die. And it was so bad. And we only managed to rescue 2 people off the vessel because all the rest jumped in the water to swim to us and got chewed up in our propellers. So there was a lot of screaming going on from the crew and the captain. So I have this horrible experience that I had kind of forgotten, or I thought, but the body holds the score. Yeah. But yesterday I was filming I've got my first festival coming up, the Wellness Way Festival. So I was with Sean, my videographer, and we were at Wasing Park, which is where our first festival is, with Barbara O'Neill. I'm going to give that a plug. And we were filming. We've got Wim Hof's right-hand woman, Emma Strayer, flying in for it. And she's going to be doing breath work, the Wim Hof technique, cold water and the lake at Wasing. So Sean said, we've got to film a little bit here, your talk, and then we'll just have a lovely, great big you jumping into the water. 2 hours it took for me to get in the water. 2 hours. And he was standing there holding the phones going, I really can't hold the phones much longer. You've got to do this. 1, 2, 3. And I go, 1, 2, 3. I feel sick, I can't. And then I had to say, right, we've got to stop and I've got to tap on this. And so we tapped and I let myself know that I was safe in the here and now. And that's when the memory came up of the ship. And I thought, shit, no wonder. That's why I don't ever jump into, you remember kind of like when you're on holiday, when your kids are young and they'd be dive bombing in the pool and they go, come on, mum. And I go, no, I can't do that. And I walk down the steps or the ladder and I was very, very, 20 minutes to get in. It's like, okay, now I'm in the water. And then I realized yesterday that this is why I couldn't do it, because this fear, but we tapped and we have the shot.
Well done. So tell us about the festival.
Oh my goodness. So I'm so excited about this. I can't tell you. I'm as mad as a hatter. Last year I was lucky enough to work with Barbara O'Neill, and the universe, as I said, I'm a shit hot manifester. The universe just put everything in place for me to meet. So I was a speaker at Jam for Freedom. Somebody came up to me and said, oh, Philly, I've come from Ireland because I absolutely love you and I love your podcast. And I want to say thank you so much. I didn't have the jam because of you. And I'm like, bless you, bless you, bless you. And I said, I'm coming to Ireland in September because I bought a ticket to see Barbara O'Neill talk. And she went, oh, but Jesus, my friend knows her. I need to introduce you to Jenny. And I'm like, yes, please. I packed up with Sean. We packed up the podcast studio, the lights and the cameras and everything else. And we flew to Ireland, not knowing if I would meet Jenny or Barbara, not knowing if I'd have an interview. But sure enough, I got the call the next day going, we'll be there at 11 o'clock tomorrow morning for you to interview Barbara. Like, oh my God. So I get to interview one of my absolute heroes. Through that, it transpired that last year I was able to have Barbara with me for 24 hours in the UK, and she did a talk and we did a wonderful evening together of 1,200 people, completely sold out. And we were heaving to the rafters. and there was still a queue around the block with people trying to get in. And there was one lovely lady, and she'd come all the way from Scotland. So she just traveled for 8 hours without a ticket, hoping that she'd get one on the door. And my daughter came up to me just before I was about to go on stage with Barbara. And I knew she wouldn't have interrupted me then unless it was important. And so I said, "What is it, darling?" She went, "There's a woman come from Scotland, no ticket." She said, "There's no seat. What do I do, Mum?" I said, "You throw her one of the T-shirts, the helpers T-shirts, and you stand her at the back as a helper." And so that's what we did. It was just such an amazing evening. And so I said to Barbara that now, I'd love you to come back next year. So I've got Barbara for a week this year.
Wow.
But what can we do that is really special? And there are two things that are really dear to my heart. I've been a member of the People's Health Alliance since it started 3 years ago. And I believe that there should be a health hub in every single town and city in this country. And I want to be part of building that new NHS natural health system. And so I've already teamed up with the College of Naturopathic Medicine, who I love their college and their degrees and everything. And they came on board last year and helped me with Barbara. I spoke to them earlier this year and I said, "Can we do a health hub at CNM?" And they went, "Yeah, absolutely." And so this is we had the first one in February, and we had Dr. Sarah Myhill, Dr. Jenny Goodman and Clive DeCarl and all these wonderful people talking. And then throughout the day, people also went and saw practitioners, did workshops, and we had stallholders there selling brilliant natural products. Everything is vetoed by me. If I don't use it, if I don't approve it, it won't be there. And it was a sellout, and it was a fantastic day. So I've asked Barbara to do one of those August the 5th at CNM. So we've got that. They're selling really fast. We only launched the tickets for all of this a couple of weeks ago. So it is going absolutely crazy at the moment. But my goal is that we have in every town and city, we have this new NHS, so that people can learn about all the wonderful things that they can do. And so much of it is free. So much of it is just getting your bare feet on the ground. The power of humming, activating the vagus nerve, breath work, tapping. There's so much that you can do for free.
Yeah.
And then the CNM can only take 300 people. And last year we sold out 1,200. So I'm like, okay, it's not big enough. So we're splitting the day into two as well. So Barbara will do the same talk morning and afternoon. So you do one of those talks, and then you spend the other half the day with the practitioners and the workshops, meeting everybody, all these lovely awakened souls. I thought we've got to do something big. I thought, let's do a festival, shall we? I had no idea how much work it was. I'm just finding out now. So this is going to be a massive version of the Health Hub. We're going to have the speakers. We've got Barbara, obviously, as the headliner. We have got beautiful Dr. Jenny Goodman. We have got Breath Pod doing breath work, which I'm so excited about. We've got my mentor, hopefully, Greg Mannion, is going to fly back in from Thailand. He trained me, and his brother wrote the music for my album, The Wellness Awakening, which at the moment was available on my webpage. We have put it up publicly in 2021, but when I started the podcast, and we haven't even talked about my podcast, when I started my podcast, which I did because I kept getting taken down off social media because it's harder and harder to get natural health out. And yes, shadow banning is a thing. I lost my first account on TikTok, 44,000 for talking about spreading the health benefits of radishes, stinging nettles, and breath work. I kid you not.
No, I absolutely believe it, because anything that's good for us, they don't want people to know about it.
No, because there's no money in healthy people.
No.
So I started a podcast.
Stupid, as I say, they want us sick and stupid.
Yep, absolutely. So basically, the Wellness Way Festival is kind of a combination. What was that word?
Combination
Of all my podcast guests. Barbara will be speaking. She's been on the podcast 3 times now. Patrick Holford, who I've had on the podcast twice, he's speaking twice. Dr. Jenny Goodman, who's been on a number of times, she's speaking. Breath Pod, the lovely Stuart Sanson, he's going to be leading us in breathworks. Greg, my mentor, is going to be leading meditations, hopefully with his brother, doing the music. So I'm going to do a DJ jamming session on my album, and I'm going to release it back to the public. So we had to take it down because it had got quite a big following. And so when I started the podcast, if you search Philly J. Lay, the only thing it took you to was my meditation album. So we've taken it down. We've now built the podcast. I've had my dream guests on. I think there's one person still I want on my banner, but everybody else I've had on. So I'm like,
who's the one person?
Dr. Joe Dispenza.
Oh yeah.
He's the last one left on my banner. But I've had Dr. Bruce Lipton, Barbara, just done Marissa Peer, and then I find myself interviewing really big names and going, no, you don't make it to the banner. Oh my God, I feel awful that you don't make it to the banner. Lynn McTaggart's on the banner because The Field, I think, is one of the most important books ever written. And The Power of 8 is extraordinary. So the festival is just a coming together of the highlights of my guests, the highlights of all the practitioners that I've ever worked with, trained with, come across on workshop with. So I've just picked the best of the best, and it's going to be an absolute hub of wellness. We're going to have lots of music. We're going to party. We're going to be dancing under the stars and doing workshops, learning how to make sauerkraut and kimchi, or maybe doing some metal work, or how to sharpen knives, or, kind of homesteading, really good kind of fun homesteading things, skills that we have lost that we need to get back.
Yes, we definitely do, because I'm sure we'll go through a testing time of our resilience, and everything that we have grown up to know will at some point be extinct, and we'll go backwards. We've got to learn these things.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I love what you say about the 2 places we need to avoid are supermarkets and doctors. I mentioned to you off air that I don't want to go to a doctor at all.
No.
Unless it may be a private doctor that I know is a metabolic health doctor.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Somebody
I went to see Dr. Nigel Eccles because I was interviewing him on the podcast, and I had never had a thermogram. So it's like, yeah, brilliant. I'll come for a thermogram so I know what I'm talking about on the podcast. And then we found a little red splurge of inflammation in my right boob. And it's like, oh, okay, we need to get rid of that then. So he put me on, Ludwell's iodine and vitamin E succinate, went on retreat, fasted, put the body into keto, breath work, let's get rid of it now.
Yeah.
Meditated on it, and I every morning for 20 minutes, and every night, I never touched my boob. I just did a circle and said, thank you so much for showing up. Thank you for telling me that I'm not looking after myself properly at the moment, and I bless you with all of my heart for that. But now you no longer serve me. And so, with all due respect and love, I'm just going to ask you to just fuck off. And I did that every morning and night for 20 minutes. Honestly, I lost a whole layer of skin. It was pussing everywhere. It was so unbelievably painful. And then it went.
Amazing. The body is designed to heal. But you have to give it the right environment to do so. And most of us live in a very toxic space.
I believe if you keep out of a supermarket, that's the first place you need to keep out of, because the food is toxic. And I know you still go to one, Jackie.
Well, I don't. Julian does, but
I don't do it yourself. So
I don't get all my food from there.
So no, but I buy my food, and I'm going to give them a shout out because they were so instrumental in my healing journey. Riverford Farms. I came across in my local church a little flyer saying they were doing a cooking workshop. And this was back when I was still at the beginning of my healing journey and everything was diet and nutrition. So I booked me and my daughter to go on it just for one night. And we just sat there making kale and lemon juice salads and, all these lovely salads and everything. And I signed up for a Riverford box because it's all organic. And I just have this slogan, if Riverford don't sell it, I don't eat it unless I've foraged it from my local woods or it's grown in my garden. There's a couple of exceptions to that now. There's a lovely little shop in Barnes that I use 2 peas in a pod. And there's a lovely lady just outside of Henley that has a shed called the Bosley Patch. And that's all organic. She makes my bread. And she has an honesty box there, but apparently a lot of people are not being honest in this day and age, which is terrible because then those people won't be there in a couple of years. So, you've got to decide whether it's worth your health, but you keep out of a supermarket, you keep out of a doctor's surgery, you do your basic daily essentials and you're going to be fine.
Yeah, I love that. So I'd like you to send me the links for the festival and anything else, and we'll put that in the show notes.
Thank you, my lovely.
How can people connect with you?
Right. Well, they can find me on social media, but you never quite know when you're going to get taken. But I'm Philly J. Lay, but that one is heavily, heavily in the shade of the big tea tree. So if you look up the Wellness Way podcast account, you can find me on my webpage, which is phillyjlay.com. You can join my membership there. So I have a wonderful crew of beautiful people, and we gather every month on a Zoom. And we talk about a different topic in natural health. This month, we are doing heavy metals and detoxing heavy metals naturally. We're in a very lively WhatsApp group where everybody talks about their ailments or their friends' ailments. Everybody gives their solutions, and I hop in there every couple of days and go through the messages. So that is one of the ways you can connect. That's called my community, spelled TEA. And we sit on our Zoom with our nice cup. We have Herb of the Month. This week is clove. You can find me on my webpage. Please subscribe to my podcast. Jackie, you know yourself how important it is that people subscribe and write reviews, because that's how the algorithm pushes you out there.
Yeah.
So that's it. Come and see me at my festival and my health hub.
Yeah. It is a fabulous podcast. So I definitely recommend everyone to listen. And
thank you.
So we're going to finish with your 3 top tips. I can guess sort of what they are, but go on, go with your 3 top tips.
Oh, they've got to come from my daily essentials. It has to be intermittent fasting, meditation, breathwork, tapping, because I do all of that in conjunction as one. And what one would I put above the others? There are 6 in my daily essentials. So what one would I put next? Oh, my herbal tea. I couldn't live without my herbal tea.
Yeah. Yes.
Oh, my grounding. Oh, can I have more than 3?
Yes, go for it. Go on.
And my grounding. And just trying to be, and I can't always do it, but trying as much as I can to be kind and to forgive people. And I think that is really important, forgiveness. And it's something that's really hard to do. But I think it is essential to our health, because you cannot heal the body until you've forgiven whatever has happened.
Yes. And sometimes it's very deep down inside and you don't want to bring it out.
No.
So that's where tapping helps, because
that's
you
a tapping.
don't even have to think about it too much. You can just tap on it.
Yeah.
Philly, there were so many more things I wanted to ask you, but I know you're short on time. So thank you very much for joining us today.
Oh, Jackie, thank you so much for having me. Oh, my lovely. And I hope I will see you at my festival.
Yeah, I'm going to go and check that out. Are there details up?
We're still building the webpage at the moment, so you can get the tickets. Some of the first speakers are up, so Barbara, BreathPod, Jenny, Patrick Holford, but there are going to be so many more coming on. I mean, the lineup is going to be amazing.
Fabulous. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you.
I love talking to Philly. She's even more of a natural health advocate than I am, and I genuinely aspire to be as dedicated as she is. Her passion for helping people take charge of their own health really shines through. But what stood out for me the most was how she uses tools like EFT, breathwork, and fasting, not just for physical healing, but for deep emotional transformation too. I also loved hearing her talk about grounding, starting the day with intention, and her daily ritual of herbal teas. Though I have to admit, I can't quite imagine giving up my black tea yet. One idea that really stuck with me was Philly's vision for the NHS hubs, her natural health system hubs that focus on keeping people well, not just treating illness and sickness. Wouldn't it be fabulous to have one in every town and city? And of course, the Wellness Way Festival sounds like a beautiful celebration of natural health and community as well. And whilst I probably won't be going, I figured out that I'm not much of a festival person. I can absolutely see the value in bringing so many like-minded people together. If you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to check out Philly's podcast, The Wellness Way, her book, A Beginner's Guide to Your Natural Health Systems, and her membership community. Disclaimer. The content of this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and is not intended as medical advice. Our guests, whether healthcare professionals or not, are sharing their personal opinions and experiences. This does not establish a doctor-patient relationship. Always consult a qualified healthcare professional before making changes to your medications, treatment, or lifestyle, particularly if you're on medication or have concerns about your health.